Do it twice.
There we go.
Well, hello there, Charlie Cook. How are you tonight?
I am fabulous, Matt Mallory. Where in the world is Matt Mallory?
I am sitting on my butt in my office at home, hoping that the power doesn't go out again.
Oh, that could be a problem.
That could be a problem. But you know what? At least it's not Russia or Ukraine causing the power to go out, I think.
Don't be so sure.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I got this new heavy cell phone, and it's like weighing down my stand. It doesn't work up there, so I'm just
man.
put it on the table. Well, how are you? Where are you tonight? You at home?
I am in the home front in central Massachusetts, or I like to call it South Central MA.
I never heard you say that. That's hilarious. South Central
MA. South Central Massachusetts. Ladies and gentlemen, where's she at?
Dun, dun, dun.
Ashley Hlebinsky.
Hello there.
There we go. Sorry. Sometimes
All right.
I've got so many different applications for speakers that my computer gets it wrong sometimes.
Quite all right.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Great
how
to see
are you
you
tonight?
Oh, I'm good. I just made dinner for everybody so that I could feed the kid before swim. So I'm a little crazed, but I'm settling down.
Very exciting. What was for dinner? Anything interesting?
I made shrimp with Old Bay and then a salad with bell pepper, caramelized onion, goat cheese, and lemon vinaigrette I made. Yeah.
Wow. I had a Tootsie Roll that I dipped in peanut butter.
Isn't that how like Reese's was made? Like Reese's was made like
it's two
That
great.
actually sounds amazing, but
It is, and people say, what do they like to put in peanut butter? I'm always like, dude, if you get the big Tootsie Rolls that are like a foot long, you dip it right in peanut butter. Those things are delicious, man.
see, my favorite is Oreos and Cheetos. Like one right after
Oreos
the
and
other.
Cheetos? Oh, one after another? You don't just
There's
like
one right after the other. You gotta make sure that it's still on the palate, but not necessarily eat it at the same time.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
Big Tony Simon says, yeah, Ashley is awesome. Hopefully she can make it to the diversity shoot when she comes to visit New York and New Jersey.
When is it?
I think he does it monthly, doesn't he, Charlie?
He does them monthly. I went to one in New Jersey a couple weeks ago, and
cool.
it was a lot of fun. I just went to basically make an appearance because I had to come back and we did a show with Beth Alcazar that night. So it was a 2-way full day for me.
Yeah. I'm traveling a bunch now coming up the next month and a half, so I will let you know if I enter. I've been avoiding New York, but
hey now.
no, I love New York. Like, make no mistake, but I've been avoiding it since COVID, so I haven't been over there too much.
Yeah, they released all the criminals because they don't want them to get COVID in the prison.
Right, so they can get it out on the streets.
Yeah,
just like the rest of us.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Two Live Moo says sounds delicious. I'm not sure which the Doritos and what was that again? Doritos and
Oreos? Cheetos and Oreos.
Cheetos
and Famous Amos is also equally as good.
Famous Amos, jeez.
When I did my show, they have the craft table and it wasn't very high end, and so I basically just ate Cheetos and Oreos for like 6 weeks straight.
Nice.
I used to eat ramen a lot when we were poor back in my army days.
I don't think I've ever actually had ramen like microwave or like actually good.
You know what? I am absolutely with you because I knew in college that ramen was poor people food, and I never wanted to admit that I was poor, so I never ate ramen.
Oh,
I always ate Kraft mac and cheese.
Right? Yeah, Kraft mac and cheese all day long, but not ramen.
Yeah, my wife makes amazing homemade mac and cheese, and we never have Kraft mac and cheese in the house.
I mean, I haven't had Kraft mac and cheese in years, but I'm not great at mac and cheese. I'm trying to get better, but I never balance out my like roux with the cheese, and because I'm lactose intolerant, I have to use lactose free cheeses, which are a little bit harder than normal.
Yeah, we've been doing the almond milk. We've been doing that for quite a few years, and anytime we do regular milk, it's hard to digest.
Oh yeah, no. So if you're ever using non-cow milks, I recommend almond milk for a lot of things that are like milk substitute. But if you're substituting for heavy cream, canned coconut milk, and then you can just cook the flavor out if you cook it long enough. So just like have extra time if you're following a recipe, so that you can cook the flavor out. But yeah, I've gotten really, really good at not making things that make me fart. My family.
All right. So this is certainly a different type of gun show that we have tonight. We have cooking cooking secrets, and ways to not fart.
Yes, but
and yes,
isn't it like
recognize that Cheetos technically have cheese dust in them, so I don't consume them very often.
Oh my gosh. So staying with the fart theme, did you guys hear about this woman about a month ago? There was a woman that was farting into jars and selling her farts.
Was it like also an OnlyFans thing? Because I feel like that would be.
I'm not sure if it was.
Is she famous? I mean, because I don't picture anybody buying my farts. Maybe Ashley's, but not mine.
I thought you said maybe I would buy your farts, and I'm like,
no. I said maybe Ashley's.
I don't know why I do that.
No,
I wish you would have. I wish you would have said it differently as well, Ashley. Because I'm like, why would Ashley want to buy? Out of all the things she would want, why would she want that?
I got my own, you know.
I got my own. I don't have some mac and cheese. I got my own.
Yeah, right?
No, she. This lady. She was like. She was selling her farts in a jar for like $1,000 each, and then she ended up having to go to the hospital because she was eating too much food and that was messing with her system. So,
well, so she's fetish for everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. This is Food and Fart Live.
There we go. DJ play. Right. WTF? Where's the farts? That's what it is.
Oh my goodness. This is great.
Right off the rails. Well, listen. Before we should change the topic, which is probably a good idea. I want to say that we are giving away a Mantis X10 tonight. Ooh. And if you want to enter, if you're watching the show, whether it's on the Facebook or the YouTube, you need to go to meetthepressers.com/giveaway and enter in the code history, and that will get you entered into the giveaway. And it's going to be one out of how many ever people email. And just before we finish the show, Ashley's going to pick a number. And that's going to be our lucky winner for tonight.
That's a lot of pressure.
You could fart the number, and then that might be a little.
Yeah. I don't think I'm that skilled, but
okay, all right. We'll see what we can do. But
so Donnie was our winner last week, so he wanted to say thanks.
Can Donnie enter to win again?
I don't see why not. I mean, do we need to make that a rule? Like, if you won
I don't
past
know.
Contestants, husbands, wives, friends of the show are not allowed to.
Well, let's not go friends of the show.
Oh, okay.
Because we have all these people are our friends, right? Very true. DJ Play Nice, Tony, Santee.
I mean, we are all a family too, right? We're a 2A family.
This is true.
So Ashley, tell most of the people probably out there already know about you, but give a quick elevator speech on your background and what you're up to these days.
See, like I always cringe when people ask me that now because I don't have a simple answer. But I'm a firearms historian, and I basically do anything. I probably do a little bit of everything that has to do with gun history. So I rebuild museums that have firearms-related content. I used to run the Cody Firearms Museum, and I was project director on their multi-million-dollar renovation, which we reopened in 2019. So now I do that full-time as a consultant. So I've got like 4 or 5 active rebuilding museum projects. I'm also in the process of founding the University of Wyoming Law School's Firearms Research Center with George Moxery and David Kopel. And I do a lot of expert witness testimony, especially on Second Amendment cases, as well as civil liability cases and a criminal case up in Canada. And then other than that, I write for Recoil. I write for a couple of other magazines. I talk a lot, and I do TV occasionally and produce TV occasionally. Is that good?
That's awesome.
Wow.
It's a lot. I don't know. Like I just like I actually am traveling like I think every week for like the next month and a half, and I'm not looking forward to it. I looked at my husband when he came home today and I was like, how did I go from having nothing to do to everything?
Yeah.
It's just I think the life of a consultant. I got real cushy there for a while where I could take some midday naps, and that's not happening anymore.
Right. Yeah. My wife was, we were talking about that for January. I was gone 15 days out of the month in January. My wife's like, is this how it's going to be? I'm like, I don't know. If business calls, right?
Yeah.
Got to ride the wave.
Yeah. I call it blessed with work.
Yeah. Amen.
So, this is what I like about following Ashley on all of her social media. The first thing is,
oh Jesus, we got a little dog fight underneath my table. My feral dog tried to take my other dog's quail. It did not go well.
Cue the dog.
Mercy.
Anyway, sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. So what I like about following Ashley is you never know where she's going to be, and you never know what her hair is going to look like.
True.
So, like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, it was like a super bright red.
No, that was just an old photo.
Oh, it's just an old photo. Okay. And then,
I've been like this for a while. I don't know, a while, maybe the summer. But yeah, it's been a lot of colors. It was blonde for a long time, but it was many different shades of blonde. Went platinum. That was a terrible idea because I broke all my hair off. Bright red, and now I couldn't make up my mind, so I did both.
That was your SHOT Show look there, right? Back in January.
Yeah, I had this.
Tony says that he feels like he doesn't do anything because he heard what you do now.
Right.
Well, I didn't feel like I was doing anything a month ago, so it comes in waves.
Yeah, it's you're a busy gal, and it's good stuff. So what I think was pretty cool is you put up some pictures recently from the LAPD Police Museum, and it was the anniversary of the North Hollywood gunfight.
Yeah, shootout.
The gun shootout.
It wasn't in the Old West. It was just in the New West.
It was in the New West, right? I was telling Matt that this is something we should bring up. I have to, every time I hear about the Miami shootout and then the North Hollywood shootout, I always got to take a minute and say, all right, which one was which?
The Miami 1986. That was the one with the big 9mm controversy. The North Hollywood shootout was the bank robbery with the two people. So there's a theory that there was a third person, but two bank robbers at Bank of America, and they had a big shootout with the police. The police had to go to a gun store because they were outgunned. That's its own story. And so that both circumstances of being outgunned and I guess out ammoed, but the North Hollywood one was a big change for the LAPD. Afterwards. But yeah, that's a really cool museum if you're ever in Pasadena. That's one of the ones I'm working on right now. We're rebuilding it from the ground up. It'll be a while before we get to that, but it's as of right now, they've got literally, if you like true crime, they have everything because apparently only like cool crimes happen. Cool crimes. That's pretty messed up. I probably shouldn't have said that. Very violent crimes happen in LA. So like they've got all the Manson stuff. The guns they've got, and some of it's on display and some of it's not. It's not on display because they have a moral opposition for it. If something's not on display, it's because there's still an open court case and the DA hasn't released it to be on display yet. So there's some Manson stuff on display. A lot of it's not right now because there's still an open court case with I think Tex Watson, who's still alive. There's a Jane Doe, I think it is, but so there's still an open court case. But they've got Manson stuff. They've got all the Marilyn Monroe files, the North Hollywood shootout, guns, gear, equipment, and cars. They've got the helicopter that flew over O.J. Simpson's Bronco. They've got all of the SLA stuff, Patty Hearst M1 carbine. I mean, the original mugshot of the Night Stalker, because the chair of the board, who just retired from 40 years in the LAPD, he's the guy that arrested him originally and took the first mugshot that you see in all the documentaries. I think there's some Hillside Strangler stuff. It's inside an old LAPD headquarters. So it's literally like the coolest. I'm a dark tourism person. So like, yeah, I work with guns, but I'm really interested in these kind of more uncomfortable topics and, you know, why people are drawn to the macabre and why people are drawn to battlefields and, you know, sites of trauma. And so for me, and being like a massive like murder show fan, I like basically when I had my first call with them, I like was like, keep it together because you don't want to come off as like one of the weirdos, right? I was like, keep it together. Like they're like Charles Manson, like saying all the names, and I was like,
right, don't
you know, like you got to come off as normal, or else they're not going to hire you to do this. So it's pretty cool. And it's actually one of the only times, like I've seen lots of artifacts. It's one of the only times I've actually gotten creeped out holding or being in the presence of some things.
Wow. Yeah, you don't want to get too excited because they might want to lower your pay. So, right.
Well, like they haven't hired me yet, so I didn't want them to be like, "This is weirdo." Like she's too much. She's too much.
She's too excited.
Here is a weirdo comment. Defense Dad says, "I'd love to get a 1991 Bronco and get plates that says not OJ."
I support that.
Yeah,
nice.
Not that weird. That's actually funny.
Oh my gosh, that is pretty funny. That is pretty funny.
So it sounds like they got a museum over there with all the stuff. I've been to the American Police Hall of Fame Museum down in Titusville, and just some of the neat old things that they have set up there. It's pretty cool to see that old, the way that technologies moved through vehicles and guns and the electric chair and everything,
Yeah, well, and I've never been to that one, even though it's right next to Knights Armament, which is a place I spend a lot of time. But I need to go down. I'm going to take them down to Knights, and then I've been kind of doing the tour of museums for them. I introduced them to my other client, that's the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, since they have a lot of crossover, and electric chairs. It got really quiet after I said that. Sorry.
Pretty wild.
It was electrifying. So
it was right. It's electric. That is pretty exciting. So what kind of stuff do you have coming up this month? You said you're all over the place.
Yeah, so I'm going to California next week to work with the LA Police Museum. They've got there's like an LAPD baker race. I'm not 100% sure about it. That's coming up in Vegas. So it's a relay race, and they've got a table at it. And then they've got a golf tournament they're planning. They've got a fundraiser. And then basically the LA Police Museum has been kind of a dumping ground for any type of LAPD artifact. And they haven't historically had a lot of museum professionals there. So they do now. So basically they have collections upon collections upon collections upon collections, and they don't have a great database or cataloging system. So like next week, it's more geared towards going there, getting a survey of everything that's there. I've been there a couple of times. I have a good sense, but there's so many rooms of storage, and setting the team up with a way to catalog, photograph everything that's in there so that we can have a better sense of what's there, better sense of what they need to get rid of, and ultimately kind of start setting up more of a museum, a professional museum, collection database, so that we can then start moving into doing some renovations. I say that there's a short-term, midterm, and long-term plan. The short-term plan is to kind of do a marketing campaign to get people to know it's there. So I got it on a show that involves ghosts that it hasn't aired yet, so I won't say which one. But I've gotten them on some TV shows. I got them on some TV shows, doing a lot of PR about them, so people start to know who they are, what's there. Nice. Then the midterm, we'll do some upgrades so that like once we increase foot traffic, they've got huge online traffic, even though their website is kind of rough. But once we increase, the ability for foot traffic, especially as we come out of COVID restrictions, then, we're going to do minimal upgrades so that it'll look nicer as a museum. Because right now it kind of looks like what you think a bunch of LAPD officers would make a museum look like. And so, do some upgrades for that, some interactives. And then the long-term plan would be to create a budget and do a major renovation that'll involve basically, starting from scratch on the display inside. And then they own some property next door. So possibly building a few extra buildings for event space and rotating exhibitions. And so the goal would be to make it as top level as something like the World War II Museum or the Mob Museum in terms of interpretation. So, but that's probably many years off, although I have the lofty goal of the 2028 Olympics, having all of that wrapped up because it's going to be in LA.
Wow.
That would be pretty wild.
Right? I'm gonna try. We're gonna
That would be
try.
really cool.
But we also have to fundraise. So it's not. I've got a couple other museum projects that are funded, but this is definitely one of those things where we're gonna have to fundraise. And we started doing kind of some of that at SHOT Show to get people to know who they are. So we're at a good stage where we get to fundraise at the beginning rather than when I came to Cody and they were like, we need $12 million right now. And I'll be like, nobody knows who we are anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful to be starting the fundraising process at the very, very beginning. And then where else am I going? I'm going to Miami, but that's for fun.
So
Nice.
we
Oh,
have
and I'm going somewhere else that I don't know if I can say where I'm going, but I'm going there to look at another museum project.
Cool.
very cool.
Undisclosed location.
The secret sauce. Secret sauce. DJ
Yeah.
Play Nice wants to know if you know what percentage of the guns in the collection will be on display. Is there a percentage?
It's probably for that collection. It's too early to say. The building, since it's a historic building, we're kind of restricted by the footprint of it. Like I said, there's potential down the road to have more space. And so I just don't know. As of right now, I'm trying to get a sense. They've got a great catalog of the guns that are in the collection, thank God. And so I know how many guns they have, but there are some guns that are completely unrelated that were given over the years. And so I don't even know how many there will end up being at the end of this, just in terms of getting rid of some of the things that don't make sense for the museum. But then also whatever, like the LA Police Museum is, autonomous from the LAPD, but they also work very closely with them. So basically, like anything they would want that can be displayed, they will get. So it's hard to say what we'll end up with. But as I was passionate in Cody, I try to get as many artifacts on display as possible because it's just something that's missing from a lot of museums today.
Yeah, I would imagine too that it's rotated out to keep it fresh and to get new people coming back that hadn't been there or people that have already been there to come in, right? Is that how museums would usually do it?
That's the greatest museum theory on the planet.
Oh, really?
We all say that we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna rotate things. It's gonna be so good, but we're always understaffed and paid, underfunded.
Yeah.
So yes, that is the theory, but that's why a lot of museums will have a designated rotating exhibition space because that's more digestible for a lot of the museums to be able to accomplish. Also, you need to be able to rotate things for the safety of the collections, but like I said, understaffed, underfunded, a lot of times that doesn't happen. So you just make sure your environmental controls are really, really good so that you're not as concerned. And the fortunate thing about firearms is that they can withstand a lot in terms of environmental controls. I know what my standard is, but then when you get to stuff like they've got like uniforms, you do really, really careful about your light levels and your temperature and humidity controls.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, they wouldn't even let us take pictures in the pyramids in Giza when I was back there in the 90s. No flash photography down inside the pyramids. Yeah, they said it would make stuff grow inside. So yeah, the lighting.
It would disrupt the ghosts.
Maybe.
King with all the
comment would come out.
Right, with all the technology the aliens had, it should really not be a problem,
Right? Yeah. Also, I think it was Tutankhamun. I think that's the actual pronunciation.
Oh,
sorry, that was
King
my
Tut.
dick moment. I'm
just
pretty
say
sure it's actually how it's pronounced. I could be totally making that up. I don't know.
Tomato, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Funny thing about the electric chair. So the first, and I knew it had some significance, but in Auburn, New York, which is like where I was born, the town I was born in, 1890, August 6th of 1890 was the first electrocution in an electric chair. We talked electric chairs earlier, and it made me think. So,
all right. Well, thank you there, Cliffy.
Boom, boom, boom.
Right. I know. It's a very, very timely reference. I'm Ashley's like, what?
Wait, my power is going out. My power is going out.
Electric chairs, but you were deeply committed to it.
Oh goodness.
All right, back to True Crime. I can't even say it. True Crime documentaries. I saw one on Netflix a couple years ago. I think it was called Real Genius. Did you see this one? I had to pull it up here. It is Evil Genius: The True
Oh,
Story of
Evil
America's
Genius.
Most Diabolical Bank Heist. It's the one where they some woman sent some guy in with a bomb on his collar and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Oh no,
And
I didn't watch that because I heard bank heist and it wasn't as interesting to me as like serial killers. But
oh, okay.
if there's a bomb and a collar involved, I mean, maybe I'll be
It's
into it. I don't know.
it was pretty interesting.
It's
And it's
funny.
I forget how many episodes it was. I watched it a couple years ago, but it was pretty wild.
Did you ever
There's
watch The Staircase? That one was good.
no. Is that an M. Night Shyamalan movie?
No, it was a
Oh,
document. I think it's called The Staircase. It was about a guy that was accused of killing his wife. I think by pushing her down a staircase. But then, like, there's a lot of evidence to say that maybe he didn't do it. But then I can't remember how it all ended up. But I watch everyone that I can see. But I usually gravitate towards like the murdery ones.
I remember in my youth in the 1900s, we had to read a story in English class. So I was in 6th grade, and it was called "Lamb to the Slaughter." And I don't know if you guys remember this. "Lamb to the Slaughter" was about a woman who hated her husband. I don't know if he was abusive to her or there's any domestic violence or anything like this, but she finally decided she'd had it with him. So she had this this frozen lamb, like a big lamb chop, and he was coming up the stairs from the basement. She hit him in the head. He fell down the stairs and he died. She took the lamb and put it in a pot and cooked it. She called the police. The
Wow.
police came over. She said that she don't know how her husband died because it looked like he fell down the stairs. And then she offered the police the lamb to sit and have a lamb dinner with her.
Wow.
Well, at least it wasn't the husband she was cooking. I've seen this.
I was thinking that as he was saying that, I'm thinking to myself, was it really a lamb?
The author, I looked up the author one time, and I'm going to check it out now. It was by Roald Dahl, who's a kid's author.
Roald Dahl wrote that?
Yes. I just
That's
Googled it. "Lamb to the Slaughter." Roald Dahl is the guy who wrote it.
That's weird. But you know what's to piggyback on like murder shows is that if you've never seen it, you should totally watch it. Saturday Night Live did a music video about women watching murder shows and cult shows. It's very accurate.
It's
Really?
it's the Hallmark Channel, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Man,
Well,
oh, man.
Oxygen nowadays, I think it's Oxygen, which used to be a women's network, is a complete true crime network. I think it's Oxygen. It's one of the women's channels. Yeah, because I had like a producer years ago be like, "We're doing something true crime on like," well, I think it was Oxygen, and I was like, "That's a lady network," and they were like, "No, it's a crime network now." I was like,
Right. It's a ladies' crime network. They have
yeah,
their own
it's for
network.
the ladies.
Right. Just in case your man has been stepping out, you might want to watch Oxygen.
Oh yeah, well there used to be a show on Oxygen. I think it's still a thing. Oh gosh, I can't remember what it was called, but I used to watch it all the time. It was about women killing their husbands.
Gotcha.
I've been married 30 years. I hope that never comes.
For a long time, I was watching something on Hulu called Killer Women. It was really boring, actually, though. I would just like have it on the background when I was cooking, but my husband would come home and be like, "Every day, really?"
Every day. It's a series, honey. It's a series.
It's like
Yeah.
It's like what is it? Gang of Thrones or what's that one?
Game of
Game of
Thrones.
Game of
Thrones. Did you
Thrones,
say
yeah.
Gang of Thrones?
Gang of
You did.
Thrones.
I haven't even seen it, and I know
And
the
you
name
knew.
of it.
Yeah, you know what the title is. You know what the title is.
I did. I was
right.
playing.
We've got a lot of people that are making comments on the side, which is very, very cool. DJ Play Nice has been making some comments. Luke says the best line from Fried Green Tomatoes is, "This is the best barbecue I've ever had." I've never seen Fried Green
Me
Tomatoes,
neither.
so we'll have to see if I'm sure it's on the YouTube someplace.
It's out there.
So, and I'm excited to see that we've got some new people that are watching the show.
Yep.
We've got Mr. Anderson, we've got Janine
Mr. Anderson?
Durston, Mr. Anderson, very specific. Mary Louise is on here. Mary Louise was just on the Polite Society podcast,
Awesome.
talking about her story. She's one of the DC Project gals from Connecticut. So This is awesome. We got all these people chiming in. If you've just tuned in or you've tuned in recently, besides subscribing to both of our YouTube channels, Meet the Pressers and Writing Shotgun with Charlie, you do need to go to meetthepressers.com/giveaway and enter the code HISTORY. And we, just before we close up tonight, Ashley is going to pick a number, and we're going to be giving away a Mantis X10. It's about $250. So please make sure that you enter in and go enter there.
Ashley, so we talked about a few things as far as talking about on the show tonight. What was the one that really got you and you're like, yes, we can do that? Was that full auto or assault rifle, assault weapon? No, that's my D move, I guess, right? So assault weapons, assault rifle. When you were on Meet the Pressers in the past, we actually talked about this a little bit, and it intrigued me as far as what old school historians would call assault weapons or assault rifles in military terms, and the difference between full auto and 3-round bursts, etc. I know in this 2A community, when a politician or somebody who's anti-gun calls a gun an assault rifle, it drives them nuts. It's not an assault rifle, it's a semi-automatic. But there is a distinction to an assault rifle in military and historical terms, correct?
They also get mad at you for just using the term in general.
Yeah, which it is a valid term.
That before. People get really, really mad if you can use the term assault rifle in general, even if it's the historical definition for it, because they don't like the term. But I just spoke at a rally, which always makes me laugh when I speak at a rally, because I don't feel like I really rally people that well. But I just spoke at a rally about these terms in general, and the gun community. And then I was just doing a podcast with Julie Golub about words and how words matter. Because it's just something that I've stumbled into when I testified with the ghost gun thing, where you get these terms that are really marketing slogans, or guns or terms used in rhetoric, and they sound like one thing, but they mean a completely different thing. But the reason that they're put into a certain lens is because it creates a false sense of authority on what somebody thinks something is. So ghost guns, I'll do that one real quick, because that's probably one of the most relevant right now. So if you're a person hearing about ghost guns, then you may think a lot of different things about it. I know that they talk about the whole making of guns at home and the untraceable and all of that stuff, but it also confuses people because they don't really know what that means. They think maybe it means that it's undetectable, all that different thing. They use those terms because it makes you feel like, well, that's scary. Well, that's I know what that means, even though you don't know what that means. So yes, of course we should ban them. It's the same with assault weapons. When you get to hear the term assault weapon, it's interesting for people who don't know about guns. Usually they assume assault weapons pretty much like any semi-automatic rifle that's black. But the reality is, and what I said in my speech was to check the fine print, is that when you say something like assault weapon or ghost gun or universal background check, all of those things, they sound like that's something you should do if you don't know anything about guns. And so it's easy for people to get behind it because they think they understand what it is. But then when you actually look at what the laws say or what the proposed amendments say, they don't really do anything other than confuse a lot of people who already own those things. And so it's caused a real problem outside of the gun community because they're, these terms, whether they're intentional or just ignorant, are being passed around to help, create support for something that doesn't really do anything in the long run. But then at the same time, in the gun community, we get a lot of kind of that infighting, which I mentioned with the assault rifles, where the gun community at this point, because there's not a great academic resource for a lot of people to go to learn about this, the gun community is going to be the face of that and the communication structure for that beyond our own world. But if we're yelling at each other over terms, then we're not really setting a good example. And if we attack people outside of the gun community for not really understanding something that they were literally set up to not understand, it's not, it's not really going to help out as well. So I've been doing a lot, and I'm happy to break down any of the definitions that you may want me to break down, but it's just been fascinating to me, the dissonance between what something says it is, what it actually is, and then what it actually does or does not do.
It is really interesting. I have over the last few years come around to the the anti-gun folks, the anti-freedom folks, whatever you'd like to call them. They're the ones that are kind of dictating the language that the pro-gun folks use, and I really I do what I can, you know, in conversations and teaching classes and whatever, to go with this particular term, and I'm not going to use ghost gun, or I always use air quotes and funny voices when I use these terms, because it's, you know, it's nonsense and people don't know what they are. I like to when I teach class, I like to give people the option of I say to them, so what does AR stand for? And I get I get assault rifle and automatic rifle, and I usually give them choices like an American rifle or anxiety reducer. I give them the choice of a-hole remover, and I also give them anti-riot, because when there's a riot and you bring out this particular rifle, the riot goes away. And then, of course, I say it doesn't stand for any of that. It stands for Armalite Rifle, which is the company that manufactured them. And then that light kind of goes off with
Just
people.
Armalite.
Yeah.
No, just Armalite.
Armalite, sorry. So this light, you know, I like when that light goes off with them, you know.
Yeah, come on, Tutankhamun, get it right.
Well, you know what's interesting is that the Armalite, whether it's Armalite rifle or Armalite, it's interesting because you know, I've talked to Reed Knight about this a bunch, and you know, it's hard to kind of track down. We've been trying to track down the exact wording for it, but there are ARs set up that are shotguns that use the AR prefix, so it's generally considered Armalite. But I've also gotten yelled at from the gun community for saying that too.
You're damn.
You know, but the one thing that you said, you know, like what you said about like the outside of the gun community kind of dictating the terminology and then confusing the gun community as well. I do see that happening, but I feel like we give too much credit to the average person outside of the gun community to be dictating that term. I mean, it's a very clear and concise plan. That's why I use the term marketing plan in order to use those terms. I don't hear the gun community use ghost gun or any of that as often as I do hear the interchangeability between assault weapon and assault rifle, mainly as somebody's yelling at me, telling me that an assault weapon and an assault rifle are the same thing and neither of them exist. But I don't know, it's interesting that, like, you know, the perspective of, you know, outside the gun community creates these terms and it impacts what the gun community thinks, because I always look at it more, you know, from a different perspective, because you always think that the gun community, they're fighting about nuance and technicals, but I don't think about it so much coming from that direction. But I will say that at least in my approach, because it's not really my job to tell you what to think, it's my job to give you information. I try to be as boring as possible, as clinical as possible when I am talking to someone about like the term ghost gun. So when I testified, I said I wasn't going to use that term, but I explained why. And you know, when I'm talking to someone that's a friend of mine that doesn't like guns, and yes, I have friends that don't like guns. I am still from the academic community, and it is still okay to be friends with people you don't agree with. It's my plug for the evening. But I have a lot of friends that don't like guns. And, you know, we talk about, like I told them, and this is what I said in my rally speech, I said, you know, if you genuinely believe that banning assault weapons will reduce crime, then you should be just as pissed off as the person who owns a gun that falls under that category in the law. Because one, the law is not actually doing what you think it's doing. Nothing's ever actually banned except largely cosmetic features. And even then you can get around them because you can have one and not the other. And then other features pop up, you know, as a result. So nothing is actually being banned. And you're being misled, just like everybody else is being misled into thinking it's this cookie cutter decision that can change the world. And so for me, that actually is a unifying factor with, you know, non-gun and gun people, is the fact that everybody's kind of being misled, whether it's intentional or unintentional. That's not for me to make that judgment, but you know, everyone's being misled based on the way that we're phrasing things. And no matter how you feel about guns or what you think should and should not be done, we're all being lied to, and it should piss people off enough to find out more information about that subject matter.
For sure. For sure. I think that it's too much by emotion, and it's both sides go on emotion. And as I get older and as COVID happens and whatnot, I kind of take a step back and say, okay, let me think about this rationally, especially, my law enforcement job. I can't just jump to the emotion side of it. I have to think as level headed as I can about it, because I want to make the smartest decision possible in whatever situation I'm presented with. And I think that's few and far between these days for a lot of people on both sides of the gun debate.
Well, and there's a time and a place for emotion. Like in my job, that's not what I'm here for. I do have stories of why I carry and different things that are rooted in emotion, but that's not really, I'm not one of those, advocates. I feel like there are people who are far better to do that than I am. But one thing that I think that the DC project has done really, really well is kind of, I think Di puts it as, the anti-gun community does not control sad stories or traumatic stories. And one reference that I have is like years ago, I was serving as a panelist for the Coltsville National Park site that they're ultimately going to be building. And they hosted a community forum the last night, and it was all academics in the audience. And there was a moderator who works with uncomfortable topics. So they were talking about the actual crime rate in Hartford, Connecticut, which is pretty high. And then what can a historic site, the Coltsville Historic Site, what can it and can it not do to provide for that community? And so the one thing that was said, it was actually a totally fascinating panel. I took lots of notes, but the one thing that's relevant to this that was said was the moderator made a point that said, wouldn't it be great if a woman who lost their child in a mass shooting at a school could sit across the table and talk to an NRA member and vice versa? And everybody in the audience nodded, and I wrote a note, why aren't they the same person? And I talked to that moderator on a couple of collaborations later, and I said that to her, and she was like, I never thought about it like that, and that, bad things have happened to gun owners, and that's why they become gun owners. So just because something bad happens to a person doesn't mean they're automatically not going to want, the thing that was used, against them. And so right. I think the DP project has done, and NSSF has done it too with Gun Owners Care. But I think that Di's really put it into perspective. So I think in that respect, emotion is needed, because you hear so many emotional stories on the other side, and they don't get to own that narrative. And I think that does need that has a very valid and valuable place within this discussion and conversation. I'm not the person to do it, but I think that there are a lot of people that are currently great spokespeople for that. And it's super vital and important.
Definitely. We have a comment, and actually this might be a good time to dig down into some of these terms like you had alluded to earlier. So ghost gun, give us like the spiel from your experience. What is considered a ghost gun per se in your realm?
Yeah. So let me see if I can go back in my brain. So one thing I will say that with all of these terms is that there's a federal kind of concept of it. There's a media concept of it, and then there's a state level concept of it. So I'm only going to kind of focus in some of the unifying factors on that. So like, it's the same with assault weapons. So there's the federal one, then there's like all the states have different definitions. So it gets kind of confusing, but the general concept behind a ghost gun is what the ATF is. They used a term actually in their amendment, like the only good term I think they've ever used, which is privately made firearm. And so these quote unquote ghost guns are firearms that are made at home, and they can be 3D printed. They can be off of parts kits. And they're specifically looking at the firearms that can be made that don't need to be serialized, because there are firearms that you make at home that need drilling and filing. And I'm saying words that I don't make guns at home. I'm going to. I have one to do it, but I'm saying words that I might not understand. But there are firearms that have to be serialized, that are serialized. So like a receiver, you buy it, it is a firearm. So if you have an AR receiver, you buy it, it is a firearm legally. You have to go through the background check. That doesn't mean you can't build it at home. So I think they try to conflate all of it, but really, when it comes down to it, they're looking at firearms that are made that aren't necessarily serialized. And the argument behind the ghost gun concept is that it's untraceable. So if, these things are being, and this is their rhetoric, not mine, but that these firearms are being made in the home, then they're being used in crimes and you can't trace them. So, they're these, they're ghosts, they're invisible. There's so many issues with that. One is just the understanding of transference and serial numbers, and that some of them do have serial numbers, and to transfer a lot of those things, you do actually need a serial number. And 3D printing is it's a part of this, but my brain can't process 3D printing and all of its awesomeness. It's just too sciencey for me. But the problem with a lot of that argument is that, there are firearms that are accessible that don't need to be made at home. I mean, a lot of times the people who are making privately made firearms are people who are interested in crafting firearms. They're interested in tinkering. They're interested in modifying. They're not necessarily criminals. A criminal can go and find a gun illegally, which we know that they do. But the other thing is that when you talk about this, for the most part, you're not talking about preventing crime. In their minds, the way they describe it, they're talking about after a crime. So if a gun is recovered after a crime and the gun, if the gun's recovered, then you go through this really long process where you can take the model and serial number, and then you go to the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer tells you where it went next, and then tells you where it went next, and then it tells you where it went next, and all of that all the way down the line. So that was one of the things I talked about in my testimony, is we're not really talking about the prevention of crime. I mean, they think we are, but we're really talking about, finding it after it's been used. But I don't know if that was helpful, but yeah, privately made firearms that don't need to be serialized, that aren't purchased with a background check, and they're trying to make that believe that there's this type of invisible gun that people can get a hold of and use in crime, which, I mean, I never speak in absolute, so I'm never going to say that that's not happening, but there are no real, I don't think they've ever put any real statistics out, the people on that side, of the number of, quote unquote ghost guns that they find. But it's really this debate about privately made, which, as a random tangent that I wrote in my report and in my testimony, part of this that I find really interesting is that there are these things that we want to do. And then in order to make that happen, there are legal justifications that they have to make in order to do that. And oftentimes without a knowledge of the history, those legal justifications, if you don't know about the history of it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then those things get passed. Well, the reason why the lawsuits happen and are so successful most of the time is because the justification is actually invalid. And so when the justification is invalid, it throws the whole thing out, the baby out with the bathwater, is a term I used to hear a lot when I was rebuilding the museum, the Cody Museum. And so what I tend to see, ghost guns are a part of that. Also, the ATF's redefinition of what a firearm is, which is a part of that whole, ghost gun. Right. They wrote in their proposed amendment from May 2021 that I did write about for the Senate. They said that we need to change the definition of a firearm for so many different reasons. But one of the justifications was because of the popularity and availability of striker fired guns. So Glocks, things that don't use a hammer, or external or, internal hammer. And so what's funny about that is that they claim that when the definitions were originally made for firearm, that striker fire firearms were not available or readily known. And interestingly enough, they said you have to change the definition because it doesn't have a hammer, but the other name for striker is linear hammer. So that doesn't make any sense. But when they wrote those definitions was when they were conducting and constructing the Gun Control Act of 1968, which was about what? A lot of things. But part of it was about the importation of striker-fired semi-automatics. So you can't say when you're making the definitions at the same time that you don't know that that's a thing. Plus the government there were striker-fired guns, right around the turn of the 20th century, and the government was ordering them for different things. So, their argument that, these things, they didn't exist or they weren't, known at the time they were making the definition, historically speaking, that is just not accurate. So if you want to change the definition of a firearm, you really need to have your shit together. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. I've been really reining it in the whole time, not swearing.
It's too late.
It's good.
You really need to have your shit together if you're going to do it, because when your justification is invalid, it's going to be thrown out. And then what I like to pose to a lot of people is, if your justifications are not factually accurate, technically, historically, culturally accurate, do your conclusions change? For some people, no, but it's certainly, it's certainly something that I found fascinating, and why so many things get thrown out, and that comes in with the emotion where people get so angry, like when the assault weapons ban was overturned in California for like a day. People get really angry. I got death threats for being an expert on that case, ironically. And so like
Crazy.
people get really emotional. How could you do that? Why are the courts doing this? And it's like, listen, chill out. This is not an emotional existential debate. This is about what the law said and the fact that they used improper logic to get to their point, or fudged logic to get to their point. So be mad at the people who proposed the law that had the issues
Right.
in it in the first place, not the people who pointed it out.
It's that double narrative, right? It's like whatever is good for them in that mindset. Like, okay, well, this is how we're going to say it, but then they turn around and they change it afterwards. Like, wait, you just said you couldn't do it here, but now you're doing it here. And we see it all the time with politicians and people that, it drives me nuts when I see stuff like that. That double speak, double talk with politicians and such.
Two of the big ones, I'll answer that question here in a second, but two of the big ones, just so people can kind of understand, I think it's out of the Heller decision that they use as a quote. I know people don't like the term loophole, but as a kind of way to get around with regulation of firearms, and those are the terms common use and unusually dangerous. And that is what I see most of the time I worked on one of the bump stock cases, on the assault weapons case. I'm usually not there to tell you the unusually dangerous part, because I'm not, an instructor, background in technology, but I'm there for the common use part. And you can't tell me something is not in common use when it has been in common use for centuries. And so that's usually where I come in. But I saw somebody ask me about the hearing. So that was so much fun. I do a lot of deposition. I loved that. I was really excited because with the hearing. So what I learned, I was literally told I was going to the hearing on Friday. I had to submit a report on Monday, and I testified on Tuesday. So it was very, very fast. And I wrote a 20-page report that I submitted on Monday, and it was a 5-minute. You get 5 minutes to speak, and then you cannot answer questions unless you are spoken to. So I was given that kind of prep ahead of time. Di Muller from DC Project gave me a person that does this. And so she prepped me in ahead of time that make notes if there's something you want to address. And as soon as somebody asks you a question, make sure to answer the question, like what you wanted to say, and then answer their question, because you may not get the opportunity to speak on that. And so I was taking notes. So if you listen to my answers on the questions, you'll notice that I added like 2 or 3 more things into it. And so I was really disappointed because all the Republicans except for one left the room. And so most of the time the other side will not ask you questions. They don't want to know your answers. And so I assumed I wasn't going to get asked anything really. And then Senator Blumenthal opened the floor back up for a second round of questions, which they didn't have to do, but there weren't a lot of senators there because of something that was on the floor. So he asked if people wanted to do a second round of questioning, and he directed most of his second round of questioning to me, which I was like really excited about, because I love that kind of stuff. Like I love the challenge of like my knowledge. And I don't know, I didn't lose my shit just because I'm so used to having those conversations with people about people who don't know about firearms, that being asked that question, like the different questions that he asked about universal background checks, which again was not something we were talking about, but he asked, I'm just used to going back and forth with people like that. The only thing that threw me for a loop was when he asked for my personal opinion, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't answer it. And I think it irked him. But I was talking to a friend of mine. I was getting drinks with a friend of mine who does have like a lot of stuff on the Hill. And he said, that is a purposeful strategy to get you to say something on record that is your personal opinion that can be used to invalidate anything else you say ever, in the record. So the one thing though I will say, and this is going to be kind of weird, but I'm going to say it anyways, because I like to give credit where credit's due. One senator spoke to me both before and afterwards. And genuinely, I knew he had read my document based on what he had said. And that was actually Senator Blumenthal.
Wow.
I was brought out by Senator Cruz, but Senator Blumenthal came before and talked to me about my report and said he really found it interesting. And for a second before that, I'm like, oh shit, was he like trying to mess with me? But I don't think he was. And then afterwards, after we had if you've seen it, the back and forth was pretty interesting. He was a good sport and came up and thanked me and was nice again. So I have to give credit where credit's due. I don't have to agree with the man, but my dogs are fighting behind me and they're just all over the place tonight.
So I'm gonna come up with a new one. Instead of saying squirrel, I'm gonna say quail from now on. Quail.
Oh my god, they're like in a full play mode. So I apologize.
That's fine.
But
right.
yeah, I don't have to, agree with him any of that stuff. But I will give credit that he did come up and talk to me and actually had clearly read or at least been apprised really well about what I had written.
That's good. I mean, that feels good that he did that at least. And
sorry, I'm listening. There's just chaos happening at my feet.
That's okay. So Mary Louise here asked real quick how she can find this testimony because she is testifying next week for the first time. So is it on the YouTube or is it somewhere else?
Can you hear this?
Heard that.
We hear that.
It is utter chaos. Give me a second. I'm going to take them out.
That's okay. Yeah. All right. Well, while Ashley's taking 2 seconds there, I want to mention real quick.
Come on.
If you have not gone to meetthepressers.com/giveaway and entered the code history, you cannot be in the drawing that we are going to have in just a couple of minutes for the Mantis X that is just over Matt's left shoulder on the end of his table there. So please make sure you do that because he's going to dig into the emails and he is going to we're going to have Ashley pick a number between the folks that we have that have have submitted their info from the website, and Ashley's going to pick a number for us, and that person is going to get the Mantis X10 in the mail, and it's a $250 value that we greatly appreciate Mantis stepping up and giving us these to give away for our brand new Greatest Hits show. G-Web's gun website just put this up.
That's fine. Thank you for doing that.
I'm going to say that's probably a typo, right?
But also, I do have the clip of just my testimony that is on my Instagram. If you email me after this, theguncode@gmail.com, I can send you my report. I can send you, all the things that I learned from how to handle things. I'm happy to send that back to you real quick. Did you say tomorrow or next week?
Next week.
Yeah, next week.
Okay, cool. I'll get it right back to you so I can do that. And yeah, if you want to see the whole hearing, I think it's helpful to kind of get a perspective on what the hearings look like. And then you can see what I said in a clip. I'll send you my Instagram link.
All right. Awesome. Very cool. Matt is going to enter all the names into the drawing that we have. Ashley, you always rock. You always do. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You're working on some museums around the country. You've always got stuff going on with your dogs, not just here on our show, but on your Instagram as well.
Yeah, and, I swear my service dog is not normally crazy, but when he's playing with my feral dog, it just anything can happen.
No big deal. It is what it is. Before we have you draw the number, thank you for being here. I know you've got a heart out. You got to get out of here. Matt, do we have a number of people that have entered yet?
We do almost. I just pulled it up.
Got any good jokes? Oh, I'm going to say this. So I went down to. Gosh, I went down to somewhere recently. I went down to New Jersey to film some shows in Maryland and in Philly, and I listened to Bill O'Reilly's "Killing Kennedy," and a lot of crazy stuff about the Kennedy assassination is in the book "Killing Kennedy" by Bill O'Reilly. And then there's a documentary on on YouTube called "JFK to 9/11." Everything is a rich man's trick, and it really gets into all the crazy conspiracies. How George Herbert Walker Bush was involved in the CIA and hiring 8 snipers to be in Dealey Plaza to take out JFK, and supposedly if you watch this video, supposedly the fatal shot was made from a sewer drain in the road. And I absolutely love all the conspiracies for the Kennedy theory.
Well, and then as we talked about on your show, that some of the government things have been proven and leaked the FBI with the Black Panthers and the big leak of all their confidential information. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of sketchy stuff that we know happens. So, makes the conspiracy theories all the more interesting.
It totally does. And if you want to go ahead, I was just going to
say 1 through 21. Give us a number that
it can drink.
we haven't enough people to drink.
I just make up a number. I just say a number.
Pick a number from 1 through 21.
Lucky number 13.
Number 13 is Mary Forgus.
Oh, Mary. Perfect. Yep. Awesome.
F-O-R-G-U-E-S.
Mary's the DC Project gal from Connecticut, and she has a horrifying story that happened to her. And she actually shared it with the Polite Society earlier tonight. And I have to get down to Connecticut and film a show with her as well. So congratulations, Mary Forgiz, I think is how you say her name. I try just to say with Mary Louise because that's what she's got on the Facebook.
Very true. So, Mary, go ahead and shoot us an email with your mailing address, and we'll get that mailed out to you. I'll have send it over to Mantis and have them send it out to you directly within the next few days. So, congratulations.
Awesome. Congrats,
Ashley,
Mary.
It's been an awesome pleasure to have you on. You're always a hoot to talk to and a wealth of knowledge for sure.
Thank you. Sorry we talked about farts for so long.
That was early on. Nobody was tuned in.
Except it said live and recording, but that's fine.
That's fine. They'll have to go back and watch it.
We'll have to have you on again.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
All right.
Great to see you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Well, that's all we got, my friend. That was pretty good.
That was great. Boy, we talked about everything. We talked about canning farts and machine guns and assault weapons and assault rifles, ghost guns. Yeah. We talked about the LAPD Museum and lots of great information. So listen, we want to thank all you guys for tuning in. Yes. I don't know our next show, when or where.
It is Joe Teti.
All right. And it's going to be next week at 8 o'clock on what day? Next week.
I will post it tonight.
Awesome.
StreamYard only lets us do it a week out, so I should. Gotcha. I think it is next Monday, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think it's Monday.
Saturday.
I don't know. I think that one's in later. Anyway. What you guys need to do is to make sure that you like and subscribe to Meet the Pressers on YouTube and Writing Shotgun with Charlie on YouTube, and follow both of our Facebook pages because Matt makes all this stuff and I share it. Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yep. Not tomorrow, but next Tuesday. Not this Tuesday, next Tuesday. Exactly. Not next Tuesday. Did I say next 15th. Tuesday? There we go. Tuesday the 15th. Tuesday the 15th is when we're going to be back on. Yep, Joe Teti, dual survival, military, law enforcement background. It's going to be a good show. We're going to talk about Ukraine and prepping and fun stuff like that. All that stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in. We had new people. I think Janine was a new person. David Saunders might be a new person. Yep, Mary was a new person. G Websites is always here supporting everybody in the gun community that's awesome. Putting out content. It's great to see Mr. Anderson, C&T Arms and Designs, Luke Gaffney, Pierce Gibby, all sorts of Mandy Brown. Mandy Brown, I think, is a new person as well. Gary, Gizzard Gary, Patrick Collins. I know I'm missing over some people. Deuce Olson. There we go. Yep. Deuce Olson was here. Sandhills Media is here. Defense Dad is here. Travis Swanson, Trampus Swanson was here for Trampus was great. He's got a new publication that Matt and I are both involved with, and it is called Armed Lifestyle. So that's going to be coming out this month. So we thank you guys all for tuning in. Please tune in next Tuesday, March 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Joe Teti. Teti. And we're giving away another Mantis X10. So different code, though. No cheating. No cheating. That's right. All right. So we will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Out of here.